Good morning, sir. How's it going?
Going great, Austin. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I had a good, solid Labor Day weekend. I took a little bit extra time, so got, some extra time off. I always try to do that when there's a long weekend, just extend it just a little bit, you know what I mean? Take a mile and I'm giving an inch, I guess. What about you? Any fun events?
It was pretty low key, so nothing all that notable, but always good to have that extra little time to spend with the family for sure.
Sure. Awesome. Well, very cool. I'm really excited for our episode today, Colin. Shelf's a great partner of Inflow, and really excited to talk to you about, all things knowledge management. Before we dive into that, I'd like to, ask a little bit of an icebreaker question to all our podcast guests. And that is, when you think back on your first ever job, what was that? And, what do you kind of keep with you take with you today that you learned from that job maybe?
Yeah, well, my first job was as a call center agent. So my career, I guess, has continued along some sort of connected path. I think the thing that I took away from it, and I didn't realize it at the time actually, was the importance of knowledge management, actually. And I can kind of, elaborate on that a little bit if you'd like.
Please do.
So, I started out in a mutual fund. So it began as mostly like inbound transaction processing. Mm-hmm. And the way things worked then, and maybe still too much today, trying to not date myself, is if you didn't know the answer to a question or how to do something, you just put the caller on hold and you leaned over the cubicle and you asked your friend. That's how it was done. It was no one different. And through hard work, I got promoted into kind of an inbound, outbound, more of a sales call center. One day I got an inbound question, like urgent, from one of the brokers that I supported. Said, hey, I see you have this amazing international fund. I have a customer coming in about 45 minutes. It's like $1 million opportunity. What can you tell me about it? And I was like, oh, crud. Not a different word, because about this fund. We sold like dozens of them, and it wasn't in my wheelhouse. So this was kind of more of a niche product that we sold. So I said, hold on one second. I popped my head up over the cubicle, and I asked all of my cubates. Nobody knew. My supervisor was either out on lunch or on an important call, and I had nothing to give this guy. And it was super frustrating because there was tons of information within my company about this fund, like all of the great things, the value props. Like I couldn't actually tell this potential customer anything that he didn't already know from publicly available information. And so lo and behold, nothing came of it. Like didn't close that $1 million deal. And at the time I was like, that makes no sense. I'm so frustrated, but I didn't really know what the way to solve that problem was until many years later. I was introduced to the concept of knowledge management, and then it was like this, zoom back, a bunch of years to that moment, and be like, oh my God, it's an epiphany. If I had the things that I needed to say at my fingertips in that moment, maybe I could have created a better customer experience. I could have put some more money in my pocket and solve the problem, essentially.
Yeah, so if time travel ever becomes real, I know the first thing you're going to do. That's funny. Well, great. Good story, Colin, and kind of a good segue into Shelf, right? I know that obviously in some contact centers, unfortunately not all, but knowledge management has really evolved and changed, since you kind of entered the field and, since you were a contact center agent. Can you tell us a little bit about that, evolution over time and, where does Shelf kind of fit into that story?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I would say is I would agree with your sentiment that it hasn't changed enough for enough end users. I'll say that when we're going in and talking to customers, it is shocking still today how many folks are still using something like SharePoint, right? Mm-hmm. And SharePoint was actually, somewhat of an evolution from 20 years ago, but, people are still a decade behind. And what's interesting about that is that's most prevalent within large organizations that have complex support functions. And that's actually where knowledge management is needed the most. So I totally agree with the sentiment that the experience hasn't changed enough for enough end users yet. But from an industry perspective, from what like the technology is doing, there obviously have been a lot of changes.
Sure.
Some simple ones are, like any other industry really that we're in, there's been a move to the cloud, a move to SaaS. So this is something that doesn't need to be owned by IT. 10, 15 years ago, these were big, cumbersome systems. Anytime that you wanted to make a change to how your knowledge management platform worked, it was a request from a development team, and maybe it took months, maybe it never happened, even though it was a product that you owned. And then there were just a lot of end user shortcomings. And within any knowledge system, there are multiple end users, right? There is the person that needs the knowledge, and let's say it's characterized by extremely poor search experience, having to create crib sheets on just how do I find what I need. And then for the folks that are responsible for authoring and maintaining, it would be incredibly cumbersome just to actually create or maintain content, which is traditionally done as documents, PDFs. So where it's evolved, thankfully, is the experience is now a lot better. And some of that is having a better search, but where we really are today and where Shelf is focused on is taking context from other systems, right? Because we have the ability to integrate readily now. Our technology can be interoperable. And so knowledge doesn't have to be in a silo. We're able to understand what is happening within a CCaaS, right? What type of questions are a customer asking of an agent? And you can take that information in real time and bring back information that sits in the knowledge repository. So it's gone from a stop what you're doing, think, and go find to the answer finds you. And really that's what we're focused on, is a better delivery mechanism in a way that an end user, specifically an agent, wants to get knowledge. And then also just making the process easy, intuitive, and providing insights to those people that are supposed to manage that content.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's like almost like pressing the easy button without necessarily having to press the button, is what it sounds like, which is really good. I think especially, when you're a contact center agent, you've got a million things going on. You're trying to help maybe a frustrated customer, maybe someone who just needs some information, and, having that ability to serve them efficiently and effectively is good, not only for the customer, but for the agent too, right? They feel like, hey, I can do my job well, and it's, don't have to have all the stress and anxiety of, oh man, I'm on this call. I gotta get this info quick. Wait, where do I go to even get the info? That's really great, Colin. One of the other, I think questions that a lot of people, may have if they're, kind of delving into knowledge management, right? When I think about a contact center leader, trying to figure out where knowledge management might fit into their core CCaaS strategy, I want you to, elaborate on that a little bit, right? Like if I'm looking at my contact center as a whole, maybe I'm making a move, right, to a cloud platform, let's say, or, going to a new platform. How should I think about, knowledge management, and specifically, maybe what are some good indicators or kind of key signs that, hey, this is really something that could probably, make my life and my customers' lives a lot easier?
Yeah, it's a great question. So thanks for that, Austin. I'll start by saying I still think that people's awareness of knowledge management, particularly in the United States, is still very immature. I think that particularly in markets over in Europe, it's more of an understood required function within a contact center. And the reason is pretty simple, is because at the end of the day, the reason why a customer is calling in or engaging in a chat is because they have a job that needs to be done. They have a question that needs to be answered, or that they need a transaction that needs to be processed, or they have something that needs to be troubleshot. Whatever that is, they're looking to accomplish something. And at the end of the day, you could have all the technology in the world to support that agent, but if they're missing the answers that they need, right? If they don't fundamentally know what to do, then it's very hard to create a positive customer experience, because that means in the worst case, escalations or callbacks. In a best case, it means, handle time, I'm putting you on hold, maybe I'm sending you to a specialist. And so when I think about CCaaS strategy, I'll take a step back and say, CCaaS really is all about providing the best possible customer experience. And I would say that if you don't have knowledge as part of that strategy, then fundamentally you're going to be trying to do this job with one hand tied behind your back.
Yeah, I totally agree. And look, that's not a position anyone wants to be in, right? Like, have all of the tools available to you that are out there. And if you're right, if you're, having those agents have to really search and find information, or even, an earlier example you gave, going back to that, searching on where they should search for information, you kind of get into this searchception, I guess, if you will, right? Where they're, all of a sudden 3 layers deep into just looking for a pretty simple answer for a customer. That can be frustrating for everybody.
Yeah. And just to kind of, I feel like I only partially answered your question, Austin. So you said, what are some of the signs or things that I should be thinking about? Well, really, knowledge does tie to most of those core contact center metrics, right? Like if you have the appropriate knowledge strategy, what you're going to see is the ability to influence average handle time for the better and actually improve first contact resolution, because why? Agents know the answers to the questions, so they're able to communicate the right things. And of course, when you actually say, okay, we can influence both of these metrics, what is the end result of that is that when you ask for feedback from your customers, NPS, CSAT, whatever, you're going to see those scores move in the right direction. And so that's really what every contact center leader is looking for. And I would say that when you talk about like what are some of the warning signs or like characteristics within the organization that are like, okay, I don't have a knowledge strategy. Do I really need one right now? Because there's so many competing priorities. I would say that you want to look at like the pace of change of your business. Like, how frequently are things changing within your organization? Because if things are relatively static, then maybe you can get away with delaying your knowledge strategy a little bit, because agents do learn, right? Like, it becomes ingrained in their knowledge. The problem becomes in the world today, things are changing faster. And so it's even worse for agents to rely on their memory, because what they think they know is maybe out of date. So if you're looking at external forces that are influencing your business, or you're spinning up new product lines or markets, geographies, whatever that may be, those are really pre-indicators that, like, oh my goodness, we really need to be able to supply information in real time as it changes to our agents, so that they're not communicating something that is a day old, a month old.
Yeah. Keep it, just staying relevant. And I think that's actually, a really good point that we haven't specifically addressed yet. And that is, knowledge management is great, obviously, to provide a good customer experience, to give an agent a good experience. But when you talk about scale, right, whether you're, rapidly hiring and have to train people quicker, or maybe you have some sort of outsourced or BPO type model, I see knowledge management being a huge advantage for contact centers with, that outsourced part or some of their interactions.
Thank you for calling that one out, Austin. That's totally on point, right? Like, we, one of our customers, well-known fashion brand, over the course of the pandemic, they actually had to, pivot their strategy entirely from, US based contact center to no contact center because there was no retail taking place, like in bricks and mortar.
Wow.
So it was almost like completely close or shutter the majority of the contact center. And then when it came back, it was like, the world has changed. We're not going to hire back, unfortunately, in the US. We're going to bring on partners all around the world. And
Sure.
all of these agents are brand new. They have no background with this brand whatsoever. You have no means to communicate in face-to-face meetings, where a lot of knowledge historically has been transferred from human to human is face-to-face. So you really need that ability to enable agents, and in particular, ones that are English is maybe not their first language. Maybe they're, just coming in and supporting you after supporting different customers because of the way that BPO is set up. So it's a great point.
Well, great. Yeah. So I know we've chatted about, a lot so far, Colin. And one of the things that I think just the industry is seeing more and more is, companies utilizing AI. And it's a little bit of a buzzword, sometimes looked at as a good thing, sometimes looked at as a bad thing. But, do you find organizations leveraging AI within knowledge management? And if so, what are some maybe common use cases or what does that process look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that based on where some of my other comments came from, you may anticipate this. There's not enough usage of AI within knowledge management today at all. Like we're at the very tip of the spear. What I do see is that there is a lot of AI being introduced around knowledge, which is great because knowledge is able to complement AI in many different ways. If you think about things like how do you deliver a compelling chatbot experience, it is like a great one, right? Like the chatbot provider is their job really at the end of the day is to understand what is the question that's being asked. But if there is a vacuum of quality answers for that chatbot to pull from, then that's going to be a poor experience. And so a really common use case when it comes to knowledge in AI is actually allowing for quality intents to be passed in and then to be able to surface appropriate answers in real time back. When you start to talk about AI within knowledge management, like kind of enclosed, I think the most common thing that you'll see is like an AI powered search, right? So like much more of a Google like search experience.
Yeah. Okay.
And what is happening now, and something that is incredibly important to all of our customers, is to really make sure that that experience that can be delivered through AI in a chatbot carries through to a live agent interaction. So once you get to an agent, can we actually understand intent from voice, chat, whatever channel it is in real time and say, okay, we understand what's happening. Agents focusing on trying to listen to the customer. Can we deliver those answers in real time? You said it was an easy button. It can kind of feel like within the context of a CCAS, a guide on the side, which is like, okay, somebody's calling to cancel their policy or upgrade their subscription. Like instead of having to go look for that information, I should be able to have the instructions and the talk track and everything what to do right there at my fingertips so I can provide a seamless experience for the customer.
Awesome. Very cool. Any other, we talked about the the kind of the BPO and training / scalability use case with Shelf specifically that, is there any other, kind of unique or fun stories that you care to share on how Shelf has helped a key customer solve, a challenge that they had before they came to you?
Yeah, sure. Happy to share some anecdotes. Actually was talking to one of our Fortune 500 customers there in the industrial supply space. And this was just a couple days ago. And we were talking about, what are the things that they're looking for with Shelf, what have they already achieved? And they said, you know what? We can pretty much draw a straight line between our QA scores and an agent's use of knowledge and Shelf specifically. And so that was obviously music to my ears. That's what you want to hear is, okay, the more that agents actually adopt and use the information at their disposal, the more effective they're going to be in addressing customer queries. And so that really speaks, that's the internal leading metric on what CSAT looks like, right? So that's a real common type of sentiment that we'll hear.
Wow.
Another customer, also Fortune 500 in the health insurance space, the problem that they were looking to solve is that they themselves have massive customers, right? Like, other Fortune 500s, could be government, whoever it is, but the members of that health plan, right, like are working for a particular end organization. And they stipulated within their customers, like, hey, we have this SLA for first contact resolution. Makes sense. Like, if I'm going to partner with you to provide my health insurance, I expect that you can help my employees out by giving them information when they call in. And so they have an SLA on first contact resolution. And, prior to Shelf, for years running, despite many technological initiatives, that FCR score kept dropping. And it was like, okay, let's try skills-based routing. Let's try, new IVR, whatever it may be, new training program. But the fact of the matter is that there's just so much complexity in the type of work that they do, and information is changing all the time, that it's really hard for agents to keep up. And so by bringing in knowledge and saying, all right, here's the ticket, here's what the customer's trying to do, we're going to actually query against that intent and bring back the instructions, like that's the pathway to actually meeting those FCR covenants.
Wow. Great.
I'll just say, one other thing, Austin, hopefully not giving too many use cases, but there's also a massive use case around improving average handle time as well.
Okay.
And so when I think about the most important thing when it comes to knowledge management, it really is that first contact resolution metric, that CSAT, because are we solving the customer problem? But at the same time, when you're talking about how you improve handle time and how you become more efficient, of course, when you think about not having to toggle over to another application, right, that saves time. Right? Can I get to the right information faster? So modern knowledge solutions like Shelf specialize in that by understanding intent and bring back answers. But there's a second element that is often overlooked when it comes to handle time. And that's at the knowledge article or document itself, and oh my God, is it overwhelming. It's like a 50-page PDF. And so even though I've gotten to the right starting point, which helps, I still need to put the caller on hold and try to navigate and digest what the heck I am supposed to do in that situation. And so one of the things that we really focus on is delivering answers, not articles. So we have different content types so that you can actually surface more bite-sized information or take agents through a decision tree of if the customer says this, then you need to do X. If they say that, you need to do Y, and kind of clean up the UI around not giving them just a ton of text to read. And that also helps improve handle time because I'm able to work through what I need to do much faster.
Yeah, that's great. So it's not just, guiding that, leading them to the water, but also helping them drink too, right? Hey, takes away that whole element of here's the information. Good luck. Hopefully you can figure it out and kind of reduce that handle time. And obviously I'm sure the customer appreciates it, right? Getting the answer is the ultimate. Hey, I'm in a good place. Thank you, appreciate it. But if that takes 2 hours to get to, it still might impact the CSAT or NPS or whatever metric you're using to measure your customer satisfaction.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, Colin, one of the last things here that I want to make sure I address is we've talked a lot about evolution of knowledge management, right? Where it was, kind of where it's at today. when you think about, where it's going, right, in the next maybe 1, 3, 5 years, if you had a crystal ball, what would you say may change or that we may see more of, specific to knowledge management in the near future?
Yeah. Well, I believe with a very high degree of confidence interval that what we're going to see a lot more of is that real-time delivery of answers. So leveraging AI in a much more meaningful way, leveraging that system interoperability to be able to take intent and then push back answers. That's, I think, going to be the single biggest thing that we actually see done at scale, because there are certainly technology providers that are offering it and companies that are starting to do that, but there will still be a lot of maturation. And the thing that will be really interesting is to see how good we can get at understanding nuances, because it's much easier to deliver an answer if it's generic for all of your customers. But in most situations, a customer is unique. And so it's like, how do we really actually understand enough nuances to bring back the refined right answer? So I think that's like just a really important and interesting problem to solve. The other area is helping the knowledge managers. So, when you look at the composition of a content strategy team or knowledge management team, you'll see that they are a drop in the ocean relative to the agent population. Yet they have a disproportionate impact on the outcomes that you can deliver for your customers at scale within the contact center, because they're the keepers of the knowledge and the information.
Yeah.
And so it's almost a guarantee that when we're speaking with new customers, they are somewhat under-resourced in this department. And so what I think needs to change is more understanding from CX leaders on how valuable that position is. And then by extension, how can vendors like Shelf make those folks' lives easier and easier so they can operate at scale, so they can make decisions that are more strategic. And they have an hour in their day to spend on creating a new knowledge article or reviewing information that already exists. It's like, where do I invest that time? I feel like today it's still somewhat of a question, or like driven by intuition from these knowledge managers. I think you can do a lot with data, a lot with agent feedback to actually say, nope, this is where you should focus your energy. If you do, it's going to have an impact, because we got, on average, 500 questions a day on this particular topic. Like, let's drill into that content and make it as crisp for agents to communicate, as clear for agents to communicate as humanly possible.
Awesome. Yeah, I hear that a lot, right? When I ask this question, oftentimes I get, look, it's all about customer experience, and customer experience being the driver, not just for the contact center, but for the whole organization, and how how the other parts of the organization will help effectively drive customer experience, right? So sure, knowledge management is a part of the contact center, but it's not, obviously the core or focal point. So I definitely see that trend with, yourself, and with a lot of our guests mentioned the same thing, right? It's everyone kind of coming together, getting out of, your own silos, and with the ultimate goal of making the customer and agent experience, much, much better.
And since you said silos, I would be remiss if I didn't point out one other thing, is that, knowledge management it's not a contact center specific technology or function, right? Like, it's most frequently used within the customer support function for obvious reasons. But at the end of the day, when we think about our work lives as employees, there are always times that we need to draw on knowledge, and that's being done still relatively inefficiently, because there's still too many enterprises that have like this, we'll call it a monolithic legacy knowledge approach. And so the other thing that I see changing within knowledge management is, how do we actually deliver on the promise of the category as a whole, which is like can we serve up knowledge to all employees across many different use cases and allow that knowledge to actually be maintained in a really healthy way across the enterprise. And so that's a big problem to solve. The ability to integrate knowledge into other applications, CCaaS, CRM, ticketing system, whatever, like that list needs to get much bigger. And people need to be thinking more about what are the other activities that employees are taking day in and day out that require knowledge. And that's really going to help organizations create sustainable competitive advantages.
Definitely. That's a great point. That you're right. It's not just about the contact center. There are many, many use cases for knowledge management. And at the end of the day, it's about efficiency, right? I guess if you boil it down to one word, I'll never be happier than the day that we release knowledge management for the new husband. I'm newly married, and I would love if when I'm in these conversations with my new bride, I get, hey, here's what you should say, right? It's like, okay, good. So that's when that comes out, I'm the first customer. I promise you that. Awesome. Well, Colin, really good conversation today, man. I'll make sure that we wrap up now so we can give people a good bite-sized episode, but. Could talk about this with you all day, and really appreciate your time. Appreciate the Shelf partnership, and I'm looking forward to continuing these conversations and talking with more customers with you guys.
Yeah, Austin, it was a pleasure, and we obviously appreciate the partnership very much as well, and happy to continue the conversation, whether it's through podcast or offline. I love talking about this stuff. Could do it all day, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Colin.
All right.
There you go.